So today we're continuing our study in Galatians. I'm still a little worn out, as I said, because we've had more snowstorms than we've had in 10 years. There's one mistake I made last week on the thing I was quoting. It was because I was tired, and I apologize. But when I said everything subjective or measured is inaccurate, measured is not the word I meant. Everything that is subjective or perceived is not 100% accurate. Everything measured obviously is. And so like when we're evaluating people in our society, which is not necessarily relevant to this verse, but one thing I want to mention is that all of your opinions are not 100% accurate. All of your opinions are not 100% wrong. So like if you disagree with somebody, if it's based on something that you're perceiving, which is an opinion, which is an opinion of your environment for the most part, then it's impossible that your perception could be as accurate as God, the Creator. Or when you're looking at somebody else, especially if the other person's intelligent, it's impossible that their opinions could be 100% wrong. So in life, what we used to do is have like these good conversations with people that we disagree with, because then you learn, from someone else's idea. And then something subjective is just basically an opinion. It's where the old saying, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So so how you rate your senses is based on your own personal opinion based on life experiences. So I think in our time, we have this division where people are looking at opinions and perceptions to be factual information, and everybody that disagrees with them to be wrong. But anyhow, I just wanted to make that correction to a mistake that I made, because I knew I was tired when I made that mistake. And I hadn't had notes on verse 9. I'm not going to, we're going to read verse 9 and 10. We're going to go over verse 9, but we pretty much covered the point that Paul made in verse 9 when we were explaining verse 8. Okay, so in Galatians 6, verse 9 and 10, it says, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. As we therefore have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith." Okay. So what would be another biblical word? That's I can't call it a word because it's two words. What would be another biblical word for well-doing? Or you could put two words into it.
Good works.
Yes. Well-doing and good works are, the same thing. Okay, actually, I'll just leave these glasses on. Okay, so I did a couple little notes here on verse 9. Okay, how is doing good works, in essence, spiritual sowing?
When you're doing say you're doing something to help somebody or witnessing to somebody, like there's an expectation that you're going to improve their life or bring them closer to God, like you're expecting some harvest from that, not for you personally, but for them, say.
It's not necessarily based on what you're expecting, though. It just is what it is.
Okay.
So it's like, if I do something good for you,
right,
then the point is that goodness will edify you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then if it does, then I reap the good from you.
Right.
Because then you become better, then you do good for me.
Yeah.
And others, or other people that I care about, right?
Yeah.
Or other people that God cares about, but basically doing good has a positive impact on other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Jesus says, let your light shine before men. Basically, letting your light shine before men, or that which you hear preaching on the housetops, that is basically sowing.
Yep.
And then the part where Jesus says that they may see your good works or see your light and glorify your Father which is in heaven.
Right.
Them glorifying your Father which is in heaven
Mm-hmm.
is the reaping.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, why should we sow good works if we're saved by grace? If we're saved anyhow, what's the whole point of sowing good works?
I mean, it improves your life. It makes you happy. It makes the people around you happy. Makes good people happy, and I don't know, it strengthens your connection to God.
Yeah, good works is the essence of God's character. Like
Yeah.
everything Jesus did was good, was a good work, and so I think like if you look at the Baptist theology of the '90s, which was we shouldn't do works because you don't have faith if you believe in works, and the idea of the faith in works is that they felt that people focused too much on works and didn't have any love for God, and they felt that the works were done out of insecurity, whereas if you just believe that you were saved, that you didn't live according to works. But reality is, if you're saved, you're filled with the Spirit. You're filled with love and peace and joy and goodness, and then these things are manifested in goodwill to all men and good works. So therefore, if you're saved, good works come as a result of it. Now there are plenty of good works for people that aren't saved, but okay, what would be an example of a good works from someone that's saved versus good works from someone that's not saved?
I would say like to go like a local example. Someone that's not saved could go volunteer at the soup kitchen, maybe bring food, help pay for some of the costs, and contribute their time. That's good. Where somebody that is saved might try to connect with somebody that goes to the soup kitchen, teach them about God, teach them how to be redeemed from their bondages, and how to have a new life.
Yeah. Basically, good works from someone that's not saved is mostly focusing on physical needs and to a degree some emotional needs, whereas someone that's saved puts the spiritual first and is concerned with their redemption and their eternity as well as their physical and emotional. So if you're saved, you add, another element to it. And then, okay. Okay, so give a few examples of what Paul is suggesting that we do here in verse 9.
Well, I would say number one is like teaching, like sharing with people what is God's will. If you see somebody, and they're talking to you and they're, either going through something or they're not going through something, but if you see that their life could be improved or their problems could be solved or their relationships could be better if they, conformed things to God's will, then you're teaching them, the right way. Like that's like,
Well, be
doing
not
the
weary
good
in
work.
well doing. That
Yeah.
means that don't be afraid to help somebody in need. Don't be afraid
Right.
to express your love, your
Yeah.
feelings. Don't be afraid to share the gospel with
Yeah.
anyone that you can. Make it a pattern of behavior
Mm-hmm.
of what to do. And one thing that occurred to me this morning is that good people, bad people, rich people, dumb people, smart people, you name it, the idolatry of our day is self.
Mm-hmm.
And so the good works or the well-doing today, everything is contingent on promoting self-image and to promote a self-desire. Okay, even if that desire is fear-based. So I couldn't help but notice that it feels like a lot of people are just using each other, and it feels like, and then we've seen people talk about the loneliness epidemic, and I think that this ties into it. Is I think people are now making all of their relationships somewhat transactional and based on a perceived benefit and a perceived purpose, whereas the biblical point of giving is self-denial. So in the Christian era, we look to other people that we wanted to serve. So the people that we liked the most are people that we wanted to serve. And wanting to serve means doing good works.
Yeah.
So then you almost favor people that you want to be generous to, that you want to redeem the most, that you care about the most, right?
Yeah.
And then, whereas now, I think people are more focused on, like if they have a hobby, then they want a friend that will do that hobby that will make them better at the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they going to talk to you, they want to talk to you about something that you have that will benefit something that they want to do. They might, if they're into social media, they might want to talk to you about how getting more clicks, getting more likes, but everything is based on success, whether it's social success, financial success, self-justification success, or what have you, whereas the Christian mindset is overcoming self. And so good works now is saying, if I do something good, if other people like animals, then I'm just going to go and save these animals. Now that's a good thing, but it's based on what's going to make me look good to other people. Or if I believe that everyone's afraid that the climate's falling apart, then I'm going to fight for this cause. The problem with the transactional type relationships, even though good can come from them, like I said, good people do this too, is then when the transaction becomes unnecessary, then the person becomes unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
That your relationships are predicated on the value of the transaction that you're receiving from the person.
Mm-hmm.
So then I think this creates a more segregated society, limited to who has something to offer you socially, who has something to offer you financially, who justifies you, or who makes you, or what can you do to look good to your group. So the what can you do to make you look good to the group can actually be some righteous things if you're in a good group, but it's not necessarily selfless, right? But what happens is if someone's not fitting in the transactions that you're looking for, then they become of no value even to good people. And this is why society is becoming very, very empty. Now let's move along to verse 10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. Okay, so the first question for verse 10 is, what does it mean to do good unto all men?
To love your neighbor as yourself. Like treating everyone you come in contact with.
Yes, it definitely does mean to love your neighbors yourself, to treat men, but like, can anyone expound on that?
You're like looking for people's needs, and not like you're necessarily looking for problems, but you have an eye for what somebody might be needing, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual. You're looking to help them.
Just, I'm going to read the next question just to make sure what I'm about to say does it. Okay, what if they are not? Okay, how does our fear-based culture contradict the idea of being good to all men?
There are many reasons not to. There's a fear for. You can find a way to be afraid of everything. So.
Give some examples of some good things that we could do that the fear-based culture tells us not to.
Pick up hitchhikers. Every time I see a hitchhiker, like, oh, I can pick him up. I would never pick up a hitchhiker.
I picked up a hitchhiker a couple weeks ago.
Well,
It was
you're
a
tall
sweet
man.
old lady who apparently had Alzheimer's. And she was out walking. It wasn't as cold as other days, but it was like 30 degrees, and she was 15 miles from her destination. So if nobody picked her up, she could have gotten frostbitten, right? Her destination was church.
Yeah.
And I met her son at church. And but yes, hitchhiking is definitely a example of that. You can see somebody that needs a ride, and then you're afraid that they're going to harm you, right? What would be some other examples?
Just like strangers, like not talking to each other. People don't talk. Just being friendly.
Yeah, people are afraid that if they talk to, like, say, like neighbors don't talk to each other anymore. You're afraid that if you get close to your neighbor, they know where you live, they're going to come by and bother you all the time, right? Or if you, there used to be a thing where you wanted to, what was the most common way in the 70s people used to use to meet a neighbor?
Come over and borrow a cup of sugar.
Exactly. I don't even think anyone even says that anymore, do you?
Right. Yeah, and yeah, you know that you don't really need the sugar. It's an excuse.
Right, and it was basically, but then people would be afraid that if I give them the sugar, then they're going to ask for more, right?
Right.
And then you're afraid of somebody. What? Okay, so you're afraid of somebody that has a different political position than you. Why?
Number one, you think that their agenda is out to get you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're the bad guys, and everything they think, everything they like, and everything they believe is destructive and evil and ill-intended.
And there's an opposite fear that causes this problem too.
Well, you might tarnish your box if you
No.
befriend the other.
No, that's part of the first one that you said.
Oh, okay.
You're also afraid they might hate you because you're different than they are,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking of the other day is that if you take the political polarization of our culture, if you get too caught up in one side, you've destroyed yourself. And let me explain. So, like, if you think that a Trump is evil and every Trump supporter is evil, then you are now going to not notice if they're actually doing something good. And if you think that every liberal is evil, you're not going to notice when they do something good. And so then what happens is you end up destroying yourself, because then you feel like everybody that has a different opinion than you is bad, is an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, then you feel a sense of hatred towards half the country, and then, or if you're on the other side, then you feel a hate. Whereas the way that we used to do it is we used to say, I don't agree with your political opinion. I have a different opinion. And then you talk about your differences, and then you find a compromise. Whereas now, everybody's looking at the people that have a different opinion as evil, and they're afraid that if they don't get their way, that everything is going to be bad. And so therefore, we're unable to see the good. Not only are we unable to see the good in other people, but then we're holding hatred in ourselves, because we're attributing such bad motives to everybody that's doing something that's contrary to what we believe. So like for instance, if you take this new thing with the American Aid Association, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're a liberal, then it's okay to see the good in that organization. Like you could say, okay, we're going to lose our influence in the world if we get rid of this organization. We're going to lose the ability to help refugees if we get rid of this organization. We're going to allow other countries to take over our leadership in the world if we get rid of this company, right? This organization. If you're a conservative, you can say, this organization has wasted a lot of money on things that we don't support. It's inefficient. It's not necessarily doing the good that it intended to do. Okay? So if you hate, so regardless of what side you're on, if you're on the left, then you can hate the right, and you can say they are literally destroying the whole world, getting rid of this organization because they don't care about anyone in need. Then if you're on the left, if you're on the right, then you can hate the left. You're saying, look at the country is on an unsustainable pattern of wasting money, and if we don't cut somewhere, we're all going to be bankrupt. And if you think that the person that has the other opinion is evil, then the correct opinion on the other side becomes not an issue. And I think this is part of the reason why people can't have constructive conversations anymore, because of this fear. We're seeing everybody as bad. And there's some extremists, like in the false religious circles, people actually see people on the left as demons. They actually think that they are controlled by demons.
Right.
And then people on the left seeing people on the right as Hitlers and oligarchies and people that are trying to manipulate the entire culture for their own benefit.
Right.
This way of thinking will destroy the world if we don't change.
Right.
But on the context of the Bible, of this verse, is that it becomes impossible to do good unto all men if you see them this way.
Right.
Because you think they are out like Hitler. Hitler truly was evil. Hitler, killed millions upon millions of people.
Right.
Now, if you have a policy that could inadvertently hurt people, that's not the same thing as being evil trying to kill them.
Right. Right.
If you can have a discussion, then you're not dealing with evil people. It's not like with Hitler, the Jews couldn't really talk to him and say, you know what, you're using us as a scapegoat. We've been helpful to this culture.
Yeah.
Right. And okay. So is it okay not to do good to all men if they're not part of your social circle, and if they are not somebody that other people in your social circle would like?
No, it means everybody. Doesn't really matter. is to do it more than with the household of faith, but, you know, you are gonna treat good people a little better because they're gonna treat you a little better, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, the world we live in today, don't we normally treat people that are of the household of faith worse because they're not necessarily part of the world?
Yeah.
It's okay to discriminate against a Christian, but it's not okay to discriminate against someone that's gay. It's not okay to discriminate against someone that's trans. But if someone is a Christian and other people don't like them, it's okay if they're lonely. It's okay if nobody wants to visit them. It's okay if nobody likes them, right? So we live in a world where we're not at all trying to be good to people that are not part of our social circle. And our social circle is only valuable if it promotes our identity. So when it says to be good to all men, it doesn't mean if it benefits me to be good to you. Now, if it benefits me to be good to you, that's not evil by itself. I mean, it's so someone that recognizes the benefits in their social circle to be good to others is better than somebody that's selfish that doesn't help anybody at all. But there's a difference between goodness and righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
So righteousness is godliness. So righteousness doesn't discriminate. It has the virtue for virtue's sake. So the good Samaritan, for instance, was the poster child of righteousness.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's the difference between the new covenant and the old covenant. In the old covenant, our righteousness was geared more towards our actual social circle. It was a good one. It was one that obeyed the law that was of the seed of Abraham, okay? But now we're supposed to be good to all men and treat everybody equally from the standards of goodness and God's design. So I think in this fear-based time that we have now, we discriminate against people not because we think we're better than them. It's because we're afraid that if someone doesn't look good to our group, that we're going to be harmed by our group. We're not going to be as esteemed, and that we'll have something to suffer. So I think people then look for flaws in people that are not in their social group because they are afraid of the consequences, and because people become negative, they look for this before they look for the need in another person. Okay, moving along. I should have read down 3. I've kind of addressed this, but I just soon go through my questions anyhow. Okay, should we be good to people that have different political opinions than we do? Are they included in this being good to all men?
Yeah, they can still be good people. Not every opinion. Like, people come to different opinions. Like, kind of like you were saying when you started, with what you opened with, but like, from their experiences. So there might be a reason that you don't know that someone feels a certain way about something.
What does
And
it
they
do
might
to
have a
you
good
to
reason.
think that everybody that has a different political opinion is evil? What does it do to you as a person?
I mean, it kind of gives you an ego. You think that your opinion is the best and everyone else is bad, and then it also takes away your love and your ability to see other people's goodness.
Also, in the past, when we actually tried to talk things out, there was a degree of faith that what's best will happen in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if I hate you because you're different, is that the best way to redeem you and bring you to my way of thinking?
No, it's you're not gonna find the truth, which is usually in the middle of the extremes. You're not gonna find what's good about me, and in the meantime, all of your hatred is just gonna poison you. Like it's bad for your health, bad for your mind, bad for your soul.
Wouldn't it be nice if we took that example I gave, the aid organization, and we said, you know what? This does a lot of good in the world. It's good for us as a country to have done this. It was invented by the Kennedys. And like every other organization, we need to eliminate the waste to make sure that it's doing
Yeah.
its original function.
Yeah, again, the truth is in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
But you could learn. But if you demonize people that are different, then you can't see.
Right.
You can't ever see the good. But what it does to you is it gives you a heart of hatred.
Right.
It gives you a heart of justifying your fears. It gives you an inability to empathize with other human beings. And in the end, this is what causes wars, I believe. Okay, so the next question that's would only be a relevant question for the last 6 years, maybe, is should we be good to people that are older than us, that are a generation ahead of us? Explain, is it, or should we just say, okay, they're different, they're old, we don't want anything to do with them? What does it mean to be good to someone? Does it mean just being polite in public?
I mean, that's a good start.
You like, you care about them, you care for their needs, you care about how they feel.
One thing I didn't do, I'm going to look this up while you're answering. But you care about, but that's not much different than being good in public, though. Okay, if he says to be good to somebody, what's an example? If you can think of someone that's good to you on a regular basis, what do they do that's different than people that aren't?
They care about your day, they care about,
Yeah, like in general, they just care.
yeah, they care about, I guess it's more into the emotional and the physical.
Okay, can they do that if they don't know you?
No, they have to spend time or at least talk to you regularly.
Well,
Okay,
I
so-
think you could care about like a stranger.
Yeah.
I guess what my point is, though, is I think we discriminate against people in this isolating world without realizing it. Like, okay, if you go back 150 years ago, before there was cars, internet, and planes, you had a society that you saw every day. So you couldn't just cancel somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in your house every day, everybody's in your church every day. So people had to figure out how to get along, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think now people are afraid to connect with other people, and then they justify it by saying, I didn't do anything wrong to them. I was nice to them out in public.
Right.
Being good to all men means a little more than just being a kind person out in public. If you're good to someone, you are open to being their friend.
Mm-hmm.
If you're good to someone, you're there for them in a time of need, right? If you're good to somebody, you give them a helping hand. If you're good to somebody, you show some affection to them, right? It isn't just, oh, I didn't, I wasn't rude to them out in public.
Right.
So our society is saying we have age discrimination in our society, whereas in the past we used to respect our elders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think when it's fear-based, okay, like the age discrimination doesn't necessarily mean that we're out killing old people. But what we're doing is that, this apostasy is in the emotional setting, just like this covenant is in the emotion. Like the covenant of grace is the covenant of love, peace, goodness, and joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the apostasy now is we're not going to give any love to somebody if they're more than 4 years older than me. and everything that you like. So if you like something that's outdated, oh, I'm aging myself because I liked the group Loverboy or something, right? And so people now, there's a sense of shame that's associated with being a certain age. So if you have like a fashion style that's old, people are looking down on the fashion style that's old. If you're old and you look really young, and then people find out that you're old, then they feel like you were dishonest with them, that you manipulated. They would never have gotten to know someone that's old if they had just been honest about their age in the first place. We are looking at every time there's something, if someone gets sick, it's because you're old. If you pull a muscle, oh, yeah, you're getting old, you pulled a muscle. If you're tired, yep, you're tired because you're old. So we're taking every negative human condition in life, and we are attributing that to being old. And
Yes.
we're also taking everybody that's old and attributing them to being backwards, to being evil, being greedy, having backwards values, and to being unworthy of socialization, unworthy of human contact. And so, how can you be good to somebody if you believe that value?
Probably wouldn't be.
But if everybody in your social circle has those values and you believe that your meaning in life comes from how well you're esteemed by your social circle, how do you overcome that? Paul says, be good to all men. What if
Right.
that man is old? Do they matter as much as someone that's your age?
I mean, most people marry before, so yes.
Right, so how do you overcome it if you've been brainwashed by society into thinking that your value is based on how highly your image is exalted? And you got to be good, and it totally contradicts your image. What do you do?
Get over it.
Well, yeah, you get over it. How do you get over it? Not by a light, not by a camera, but what comes after camera?
Lights, camera. I don't know.
Just changing,
Action.
doing it.
Action.
Yeah.
Right.
I got. Yeah.
Nobody said it.
Yeah, but by just changing,
Well, you just
doing it anyway.
you do what's right, and then in the process of doing what's right, you're gonna change how you value life. Okay, so if your life is just valued by a fear of not being esteemed by your social circle, then you're going to be limiting to your life to not just your social circle, but your feelings of your social circle is the limit to how strong your feelings can be. The esteem of your social circle is the limit to the esteem that you can have. Whereas if you try to live your life based on God's will, you get rid of the limits. Okay? So, the thing we talked about before, just before this one, this question we talked about someone's political views, right? And the example that Richard here gave in Bathroom Break was this wonderful story of a black man in the KKK that ended up having a discussion in the 60s or 70s and become great friends, right? Became best friends. And then the guy from the KKK ended up quitting the KKK and became godfather to one of the other people. Okay, neither one of these guys look good in their social circle, I don't think, do you?
No.
I mean, consequently, society was a little better. They might have looked good in a different social circle, but the one that they were in, they didn't look good in, right?
Right.
And so basically, it's not really, your feelings aren't really that deep. if they're subject to everything you're afraid of or what you think everybody else thinks. So the point of the new covenant is that all creatures are made of God and all things are equal. Like the vision, a lot of people think that Peter's vision, where God said, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat," they thought that this was God saying it's okay to eat pork. But what it actually meant was that all people are God's children and that all people can be kosher, all people need to be saved. And eating under the old covenant was symbolic of fellowshipping. And so we need to fellowship with all people. So if we're trying to include all people in God's family, then we do not discriminate against them for being old. And not discriminating doesn't, it's not just, I'm not rude to this person. Not discriminating. So like if you would be friends with somebody that's your age in your social clique, and then you meet someone that's the exact same person that's in a different social clique, that's a different age, you shouldn't say, "Oh, I like this person more because they're my age."
Right.
And the things that we have in common with people, now that we're viewing relationships as transactional, we're looking at common hobbies as things in common. Whereas under the Christian age, it was our faith that was what was common. We're supposed to have a common belief in righteousness, a common goal of redeeming the world. So if what you find in common with your fellow man is godliness, then these things can persist for eternity. But if you're looking for people that have the exact same political opinion as you or the same hobby as you, then some people change hobbies, some people outgrow hobbies, some people change their politics. So the things that we're using in this society to bring us together are not very deep and they're not eternal. And I think in the Christian world, people are doing the same thing with their faith. I think people are using their faith to be a social circle, and they're viewing what verses they quote, or if they're dogmatic or if they're political, as a means to exalt an image, and they're more concerned about looking spiritual than they are on actually bonding with people, in my opinion. Okay. Is it okay not to be good to someone if we are, I can't read that word. Why are we supposed to be better to Okay, so is it righteousness to alienate a true believer from your life because you've chosen to associate with non-believers as your primary identity? So when you get up to the great white throne, is God going to say, "I really thought this was great, how you limited all of your contact with true believers so that you could not look bad to non-believers in your life"?
Doesn't sound likely.
Well, when Paul said, especially of those of the household of faith, how do you apply that then?
Yeah, well, the implication is that you're supposed to be treating those of the household of faith better than the good that you do to all men.
I don't think in our world or in our culture, I don't think people do that.
No?
No. I think people that are good don't mind tolerating somebody that's of faith because they do have that goodness in common. And if someone's a good person, they're not going to like be bad to somebody that's a believer.
Right.
But once again, just because you're a good person and you don't persecute a believer, that doesn't mean that you're favoring a true Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people that live their lives for mediocrity, I think they think that they're deeper than true Christians because they think that because they're more open to everybody, that this is a more righteous thing than being exclusionary as a true Christian. But why is that wrong? Because, I mean, it sounds good on the surface.
Because you're not really loving all those people if you don't care about their spiritual well-being. You're not trying to save them.
Well, what is the purpose of our lives from a Christian perspective?
Save people and love each other, love God.
Or is to be redeemed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then with that in mind, why is it more important to favor a true Christian over a non-Christian?
Because they're going to help bring you closer to that. They're going to support you. You're going to support them, and you can grow together. And when you hang out with non-believers, even if they're good people and not causing you to sin, they're not building that.
If the goal is redemption, then the more we brighten the light of redemption, the more of godliness that's in the world, right? So if your example is, I'm a good person, but I don't really want to be close to someone that's a Christian, what does that say to the world?
Christians aren't good.
It says that if you're a good person, you're not going to really like someone that's a true Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whoever you like the most, the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So whoever you care about the most, whoever you like the most, that's who you're the closest to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're favoring them of the household of faith, then that means that the more someone is into God's will, the more you like them. The more you like them, the more you spend time with them. The more you spend time with them, the closer you are to them. The closer you are to them, the more you love them, right? And so I think that in this apostasy, a lot of the good people think that they're more righteous by keeping Christians at an arm's length and favoring people that aren't. But I don't understand how this exists, because if you actually believe in God, wouldn't you want to be redeemed, and wouldn't you want to try to redeem the non-believers in your life? Like, I realize you can't witness to people every day, but shouldn't you at least try to save somebody if you care about them?
Mm-hmm.
So then this leads me to believe that even good people that live their lives for fear are not really loving the people that are in their lives. I just think there's good people that have a good nature, and if you have a good nature, then you don't harm other people and you're honest. But I think the only way to have true love is through a relationship with God. I haven't seen love work without an influence of God. I mean, you can have an influence, like, if you believe in the golden rule, you can have a degree of love without being saved, but that's still an influence of God.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple of these questions here that I couldn't read. Oh yeah, okay, so I kind of just addressed that. Why are we supposed to be better to a actual believer in Christ than a non-believer? Okay. Is it good to be... Okay, is it okay to alienate a true believer? Okay. can you be good to someone that you love? Can you be good to someone that you love if you only see them when you're doing a church service?
Well, it doesn't allow you much time to be a part of their life. Like, in order to be good to somebody, you kind of need to become involved with them.
Well, the first either 400 or 500 years of the church, they met in houses like this. And then they started the church buildings, right?
Right.
Okay, so my thought has been the point of this study, if you're hearing this study on YouTube, this is hopefully be an inspiration to help you with your own group, and hopefully it could cause some of you to want to join us and to meet us, right? But if not, the point of studying God's Word is to teach us how to do a better job fellowshipping with each other during the week. Whereas I think church now has been regulated to just when you're actually studying God's Word, right?
Yeah.
So
Entertainment.
it's either entertainment or informative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if the only time you want to see somebody is at church service, is that someone that you're being good to? Is that someone that you care about?
Not really. I mean, you can, like you said, not be rude to them, or you can not persecute them. But again, in order to be good to somebody, you kind of need to become a part of their life.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a while it was just Christians that are discriminated against. I kind of think the whole world is getting like this now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're living in a very isolated society.
Yeah.
And so you can't participate in the society of isolation and be good to all men,
No.
especially them of the household of faith. It kind of runs the opposite of the avoidance mindset.
Yep.
The avoidance mindset is anything that makes me uncomfortable, I'm going to cancel. Anything that makes me look bad, I'm going to cancel. Anything that my group wouldn't like, I'm going to cancel. And I'm going to just be 100% independent by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the idea of redemption is that I'm going to love with no dissimulation. We're going to pray without ceasing. We're going to be close to each other. We're becoming one in the body of Christ, and we're going to live together for eternity. So this is where a good Christian is the complete opposite of a good person that's not a Christian. But then on day-to-day activities, the similarities get less. Like a good Christian, if they're around a stranger, isn't that much better than a good person that's not a believer around a stranger. If you're out in the airport, a good person isn't going to push their way through the line to get their luggage first or be rude on the plane, and neither is a good person that's not a Christian, right? A good person that is a Christian will pay their bills. A good person that's not a Christian will pay their bills. You know, both people can be honest. So I think what happens is a lot of people, first, they lose their sense of emotion, and then they justify it by, once you've lost the emotion, then the similarities become less, and then you say, okay, I'm a good person, and I didn't have to go to church, I didn't have to believe in God, I didn't need these commandments to be a good person, right? Because what happens is that the commandments have something deeper underneath them that you can't see unless you actually put an effort towards them. You know, in my opinion here. Can you be a good person to someone that you are afraid to be associated with?
No, you're gonna be having like you're afraid to be associated with them, even if you don't think they're evil, you think they're of less value, they don't add value to you, you don't really value them or care about them that much, so you're not gonna treat them that well.
Yeah, basically all the things that we talked about today are examples of people that you'd be afraid to be associated with, right? So if you're a liberal, you'd be afraid to be associated with a conservative. If you're a conservative, you'd be afraid to be associated with a liberal. If you are progressive, you'd be afraid to associate with someone that's traditional. If you are clean cut, you'd be afraid to be associated with someone that's a drug addict, right? If somebody is a competitor of yours in your work, you might be afraid to talk to them because you don't want them to have your company secrets. If someone is older than you, we now afraid to have social connections with people that are older because society, looks down, upon that. You might be anybody that's totally hard on their luck. So to be good to all men, I know I'm hammering this point really hard, but to be good to all men means that you do not use society's stigmas to justify not being good.
Yeah.
So if you go in the past, society was against people that had different religions, different cultures, different races. So I've addressed today the ones of today. And the ones of today, believe me, I think that the discrimination today is both not as bad and worse than the past. And I'll explain what sounds like a contradiction. Is in the past, the most irrational people got way more violent than people did today. And that's the part of discrimination that was worst in the past. But the discrimination of today, because it's all fear-based, there's so many of them that this isolation, there's more widespread discrimination today than there ever has been before. It might not yet have culminated with violence, but in some cases it might, but it has culminated to social isolation. It has destroyed the family structure. It has destroyed faith. It has destroyed social interactions with other people, the results of these discriminations. And I don't know, I think I would almost rather be in a group that could be killed by another group that I can separate from and still have family and still have a social life and still have people that care about me than be in a society where everybody just is indifferent towards everybody, myself. And I think in the past, people would be against what was bad in the other group, whereas now you don't see that very often. Mm-hmm. Most people pick a group to identify with and then actively discriminate against everybody that they perceive that's different. Now, we have a lot more questions on verse 10. We will get to them next week, and we will conclude this lesson here today. So, dear God, I pray that you give us all the strength to do good to all men, and that you help us to overcome the social barriers that are in place to obey these commandments in this time, in these last times of great apostasy. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.